Richard Norman in her class, right?
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. A lot of work for the song ministry. Jill ended up with the strategy by her. Scale model of our new trees. He built on a big quilting.
Do we know what gender?
Have you ever used it? Yeah. Your main sewing machine. Yeah.
Since everybody's over here, I'm going to shift around. Hope you all are doing well this morning. Do we have any prayer requests before we get started? Just gotta grab a pen real quick. So one prayer request that's on my mind is Citizens Academy is starting on Tuesday. So we're very excited. I think we're gonna have 5 students to get things kicked off. So please be praying for that endeavor. We'll have 2 6-year-olds, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 10-year-old all coming here to learn more about their own gifts and how to change the world for good. So it's gonna be a lot of fun, but lots of learning is going to be involved. Anything else?
She said, all his lymph nodes was swollen bathroom. Painful. 2 said for herself, she's trying to manage her stress, but it's a condition that's difficult. Worry about her.
Right. Anything, any other prayer requests this morning? All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day and for this time to come together to study your word, to encourage one another, to deepen our relationships and our knowledge of you. Please help us to focus in on the things that we are looking at this morning so we can better understand them. We are praying especially for Citizens Academy as we get started this week, for the young minds and hearts. We pray that we can shepherd those carefully and bring them into a better understanding of you and your world and the amazing gifts that you bless them with. For Sister Kraft, in her situation with Brother just pray for his health situation, that the swelling, his lymph nodes would go down, that you would bring him back to better health. Pray that his doctor appointment comes quickly and he can get the treatment he needs, as well as Sister Kraft's own focus and stress. I pray that would, her stress would not be too great and she would be able to care for her husband. Pray for those who can't be here, those that aren't well. Pray that they would return to us very soon. It's in your son's name, Jesus, we pray these things. Amen. So good morning. So we're going to test this layout to see if this works. This is going to be a slightly different class. We're going to be doing it in a different format than we normally do. It's going to be in a Socratic discussion format. So that means we're going to be doing a lot of talking to each other. This format doesn't lend to that very well because you all are looking at me, right? And so inevitably, the way that we are set up, the way that our bodies are facing, you're all looking at me, right? You're not looking at each other. And so just that's just how we are set up right now. We can change that, right? We can set up a circle of chairs in the middle here. We could go to the front. We can't really go downstairs because the acoustics are atrocious down there. But we can do this in some different ways. So we'll see if this works. If it seems like that's becoming distracting, it's not working out well, we'll adjust it for next week. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I don't make you all move around the building in weird ways, and because I don't like you or something like that. I want to facilitate the best class possible. So that's why we might shift around and adjust around. What makes a story stick in your brain? What makes a story, a movie, something last? What you read something and it has an impact, it stays with you, you think about it all the time. Why does that happen? What are the characteristics of stories that way, that are that way?
That they bring about in a different way. It's, you can see a million cute puppies and not all can stick in your mind. But if you see one riding a skateboard, that's really impressionable. That's just a brief thing. But as far as movies go, traditional for ones that I always remember is like a big hero's journey, something that they're gonna overcome and you're rooting for them, and then they fail, but then they rise again. Just this big magnum opus type of thing, with great emotions brought up within you that encourage type of thing.
Okay. So there's a emotional connection, like you're experiencing some sort of emotional kick, and also there's some sort of connection to what a story is, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and end. There's a character, it has a challenge. He goes through something, he changes, or she changes and becomes something different, right? Okay, what else? What makes stories stick?
We latch on to moments or situations that maybe we've gone through, where it's like, oh shoot, that reminds me of my this or my loss of that. So it brings back our own memories as like, okay, I'm not the only one to do that.
Okay. Yeah, so it's this empathy to understand that, oh, other people are going through similar things that I'm going through, and maybe they've processed it and gone through it in a more healthy way, or in a way that makes more sense of it than I ever have, and so it explains what's happened to us in a better or more complete way. Okay, I like that. Anything else? Sticky stories.
I think it might be an unusual twist on something we're thinking about. Just the way a song words something that is different than the way we normally think.
True.
And it sticks in your brain more because it's unusual.
Sure. And that's often what artists are trying to do, right? They're trying to capture a perspective, and they're trying to get you to sit in that different perspective and examine something new in a new way. And so a turn of phrase or metaphor that, suddenly I'm the grass in the field, or I'm the sheep in the pasture, right? I'm this doing that, and so I look at things, I look at the world in a new way, for sure. Yeah. So the other thing that I would want to add to the discussion, I think what you all said is right. I have several of them written down. I added one on there, the understanding self. I think I said understanding the other, but I think we understand ourselves by better understanding others. And so that's kind of connected. But the other thing that I would add that we touched on a little bit, but is the tension of a good story, right? If you go through a good story and there's not a real problem that the main character has to solve, then it's almost like, why are we doing this? Like if you're, this is the problem with the Captain Marvel movie, right? What's her name? Sorry, is it Captain Marvel?
It's Danvers.
Yeah, the girl superhero, right? She didn't have any problems. She was amazing, and she just had to realize that she was amazing. So the movie was terrible because she didn't have to go through anything. At the end of the movie, she wipes out like a fleet of alien ships by herself and doesn't break a sweat, and there's no problem there. So it's very uninteresting to watch, and it's not a good movie.
There's no real stakes.
Yeah, there's no stakes to it, right? And so a good story always has tension. You have to provide tension. There's some sort of challenge, and there's somebody to meet those challenges. They're not quite up to it. They need to equip themselves. They need to get better. They need to change. They need to transform, because if they don't, then it's like there's no story, right? It doesn't have the climax. There's no problem to overcome. And so I think that idea of tension is key in understanding the stickiness of stories and art and whatever it is. And so I just want to bring that up because one thing that we're going to do with these Socratic discussions, one thing that we're going to try and understand is how do we add tension to a discussion in such a way that's healthy. And so in a lot of ways, the debates and arguments and things that happen on the internet or just on cable news or whatever it is these days, they don't have a healthy tension there. It's you're on my team or you're off, you're the enemy, or you're pure evil or you're pure good, right? There's no healthy tension to understand, how things, how to understand what another person is saying, and so there's no connection, right? There's no human connection there, and so people just pass by each other. They talk, but they're not actually interchanging any information. So in a good Socratic discussion, what we're going to do is we're going to build a discussion where there's not a perfectly right answer on either side. There's if we look at it this way, you could see how this could kind of work. If you look at it this way, you could say, okay, I can kind of understand that a little bit. But really, what we're trying to do is force you to take a side in this discussion, defend it, and then listen carefully to people who've taken the other side in order to understand their perspective and deepen your own understanding through those kinds of ideas. Okay, and so we're going to first talk about what a Socratic discussion is. Then we're going to talk about kind of how the class is laid out, and then we'll actually have a short Socratic discussion at the end of this. So first off, what is a Socratic discussion? So Socrates was a Greek philosopher who lived in 400 years before Jesus walked the earth. He actually has a lot of striking similarities to Jesus. He's a well-known teacher, but he doesn't write anything down himself, right? Most figures in history that we know about, they're either kings who have scribes that write things down for themselves, or they're authors who write things down and it's their ideas. But Socrates, he's a philosopher. He doesn't write anything down. His disciples write things down after his death. And so we have Plato and Xenophon were two of the people who knew him well, who wrote down his teachings and disseminated them after his death. He's put on trial. He's killed for his teachings, for his beliefs. And his teaching style is characterized by asking questions. Okay, Jesus comes 400 years after Socrates, and he's in the Greco-Roman controlled Levant, right? So obviously, Socrates is in the air. Socrates has major influence over Western culture after his death and during his life. And so this people know who Socrates is. They understand his works, and that's part of the wider culture. And so Jesus and the people around Jesus are undoubtedly influenced by the Greco-Roman culture that they're living in. And so if Jesus is going to communicate with these people, he needs to understand the larger enemy culture that they would consider the Romans who've taken over. How do they think? How do they rule? What do they do? How have they influenced my fellow Hebrew people, so that I can effectively communicate and work with and through them. And so, and obviously that's in addition to Jesus's very Jewish upbringing and heritage. Jesus asks hundreds of questions in his ministry. There are people who count such things. I'm not one of them. But people count these things. So there's 300 plus questions, and Jesus answers very few questions. Right? If people ask him questions, he usually answers with questions. Right? He doesn't give them direct answers. I think somebody said only 3 times does Jesus clearly and unambiguously answer a question that somebody comes in and asks him. Right? And so this ought to help us understand the prominence of good questions. And so the Socratic method is based around questions. So when I'm going to lead the first few Socratic discussions, and by leading these Socratic discussions, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to take a side on either way. I'm going to try and come up with really good questions. I'm going to try and anticipate some of your answers, come up with good questions ahead of time, but also come up with questions in the moment to try and dive deeper into why you think the way you think, why you've understood the Bible in this way, or this concept in this way, so that we can explore more deeply our own understanding as well as the people around us and what they've gathered. In Matthew 7, verse 7, so Jesus is wrapping up his Sermon on the Mount. He has just talked about the idea of judgment of others, and he's about to launch into the golden rule. And right before that, he says, "Ask and it will be given to you; seek and you will find; knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks it will be opened. Or what person among you who, when his son asks for a loaf of bread, will give him a stone?" That's a question. Or if he asks for a fish, he will not give him a snake, will he? So if you, despite being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? 3 questions after he's telling us to ask, to seek, to knock. Right? So the class this quarter is going to explore the books of Ruth, Joshua, Judges, and Samuel. I'm doing the exact opposite of what I normally tell the teachers. Don't try and do all of the biblical material at once. But I think the Socratic method lends to more topical kinds of discussions. So we're going to be just looking at some of the significant topics within, especially the book of Samuel. So the last 2 months of our study, we're going to be looking at some of the various aspects of the book of Samuel to help us understand, what's going on there. What does it mean to be a king? What does it mean for a human to be a king? And why are these kings failing? Jesus claims to be a king, and so how is he different? And so these concepts hopefully are very deep and rich, and we'll be able to dive into them using this method. So each week we're going to have a topic, and for the first few weeks, I'm gonna facilitate those. So I'm going to give you the topic ahead of time, and I'll also send you some resources throughout the week, so you can watch some videos or you can do some reading to kind of understand. Okay, this is the book of Ruth. Who was Ruth? Okay, she's a Moabite. What's that mean? How does that change her relationship within the Israelite community? What does it mean that her mother moved to Moab before she returned? How would the other Israelites view her for that? How does this whole dynamic work so that we're ready for the topic of discussion the following week? You're obviously welcome to expand beyond the resources that I provide, but I know you're busy people, and so I just want to provide you some clickable, watchable things. You can add it to your daily devotional, a few extra minutes to come prepared for class. And then what I'd like you to do is come prepared and ready to participate in the Socratic discussion. So my plan, once we get into the meat of the class, which is next week, we'll start off the class with about 30 minutes of Socratic discussion, and then we'll have about 5 or 10 minutes at the end to do a recap and think about how the Socratic discussion was built. And the goal is that in the next 2 months, I'd like some of you all to lead some of our Socratic discussions. And so we'll prepare some things in groups, and then we'll kind of vote on who we think is the best, has the best Socratic discussion prepared or pre-prepared, and then we'll give them a week to get ready, and then they'll lead the Socratic discussion the following week. Again, the goal of Socratic discussions is to have a deep understanding of a complex topic. I want us to pick really good questions that don't have simple answers. My goal when I have a good Socratic discussion is to split the room in half. I want half the people thinking one way, half the people thinking the other. And by the end of our discussion, I'd really like everybody to flip to the other side, right? To have been convinced or to think about it in new ways, such as that they're now like, well, I'm actually leaning towards this way now. We're also going to use and enforce some simple rules. So be on time and prepared. Take a stand. So, like I said, in a good Socratic discussion, there's no clear right answer. There's evidence on either side, but I don't want you to say, well, I think A and B. Right? Take a stand. Say why you think one way or the other. Why you think it's more convincing to be on one side on the other. Be concise. Listen with an open mind. So a lot of people enter into discussions and they enter in order to say the next thing that they want to say instead of listening and then responding to the person that's across from them. I think we have an enormous amount of really smart people in here, and so we can learn from each other and grow if we're willing to listen with an open mind, if we're willing to understand what they're saying. That doesn't mean that everybody's right just because they have an opinion, but we're going to listen and try and understand where they're coming from. Link to previous comments. I'm probably the worst in the room at this because my brain is like a squirrel. It just kind of goes everywhere. And so when I'm in the middle of a study, somebody will add a comment and then I'll say, oh yeah, and on this other tangent, I think what about this? Right, so we're going to try not to do that. I'm going to try and not to do that myself. When somebody says something, link, continue the discussion. Don't bring us down your own thing. I always do that because I know that everything that I think is super brilliant, right? So I want everybody else to experience how brilliant these things are. But that takes away from the group. It takes away from what we're trying to do, which is build and grow with each other. And so, I'm not as brilliant as I think I am. And so really what I need to do is focus less on myself, focus more on the other. Don't repeat. So if somebody says something, don't just repeat it. Don't just say a slight variation on the same thing that's already been said. Use evidence. So I'd like to come with lots of biblical, rich, compelling evidence so that we can further our discussion through a better understanding of God's word, through reason, through all a theological understanding of these things, and then focus and do not distract. So if we have our phones out, if we're distracted by all the various doodads and gizmos we have going off, then we're going to be able to participate very well. These are the rules that I want to start with. Are there any other rules do you think that we should add to our list here? Everybody good with all these rules? Makes sense. So we're gonna do Ruth, Joshua, Judges, and Samuel. Yeah, Ruth's out of order. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Okay. Last thing is we are being recorded. This is going out to a live home audience. And so as we discuss, I'd like to pass this microphone around. It's very loud, so if you get too close, then it's going to be a little intense. So you can hold it right about here. It's good for online. It's good for here as well. So if you have something to add, then raise your hand. We'll hand off the microphone. Again, this is not a discussion to me. This is a discussion with each other. So if everybody keeps looking back to me, then we're gonna change our seating arrangements. We're gonna put a bunch of chairs up here. It's gonna look wacky and strange, but I will do it. Okay, so don't test me. No, let's have a good discussion. So let's get kicked off with our first Socratic discussion. Imagine this: you and your family hosts and supports a weekly small group in your home. Your spouse brings up the fact that you want to focus on a practical and meaningful topic to study and practice for the next quarter. Your spouse says that there's a new study that he's found, or she's found, that focuses on personal holiness. You agree that this is an important topic and you think that your group could benefit from such a study. Later that day, however, your friend texts you a link to a DVD series, and it's about growing holier into a holier Christian community. You ask a few people in your small group if they've heard anything about either resource, and 2 people have heard about the book and have heard really good things. And 2 people have heard about the DVD series and had equally good things to say about them. That evening, you're talking to your spouse, report your findings. You discuss that nothing in your particular group has you leaning one way or the other. It doesn't seem like the group has demonstrated a greater need in either direction. So the question comes down to this: which is more important theologically to you? Is it a focus on personal, individual holiness, or is it a focus on a holier community? So A would be a focus on personal, individual holiness. B would be a focus on a holier community. Who wants to take a stand, A or B?
I probably would lean towards a focus on individual holiness, because if we as individuals are focusing on drawing closer towards God and staying as far away as possible from things anti-God, then we become individuals a part of said community. I think if you focus on the whole and not the sum parts, then those who are struggling might be left by the wayside.
Who agrees? You want to take a stand?
Well, I just am agreeing. I think that it is important. I just didn't want to talk. But no, I think it's important, what Randy said. If we are strengthening ourselves, then we are better able to start to reach out and focus outward instead of just ourselves.
Who else agrees?
I think to grow a viable community, we have to start with ourselves. If we start with the community, it might distract us from growing ourselves, like Paul writes to the Hebrews and other people, that if we keep focusing on the small things, we'll never grow to be able to take solid food and grow ourselves and bring the community along with us.
Okay. Who disagrees? Travis is going to take a stand.
So I'm just doing this kind of be an advocate. Or,
Take a stand, Travis.
all right. So I think
Can
I
we turn
think-
that down just a little bit, Dirk?
I think it's better to focus on being a community because you're not trying to do it on your own. Yes, you're doing a study and you're doing individuals, but even in our small group, we've done stuff as groups and where we're working on being a better community, but you also inevitably work on yourself because you're trying to contribute to the group. You're not just sitting there doing something solo. And also with that, you can also incorporate others into your community more. You can actually grow that community instead of a lot of times people can be so focused on working on themselves, they're not actually branching out and reaching out to other people to help. I mean, the point is to spread God's word. So I think it'd be more important to work on the community.
Who agrees?
Yeah, I agree with Travis with growing the community to be more holy. Through personal experience, just trying to grow myself, it's proven to be more of a not aimless mission. There's obviously an endpoint, but having a community around me that supports me and can help direct me better has proven to have magnitude more of effect on becoming a better Christian. So I agree with growing the community.
Anybody else who agrees with this idea?
Yeah, I think the Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. Of course, we're not talking about marriage. But the first thing Jesus did when he came about, he went and looking for making disciples. So to get a group and making disciples, you know that old saying about when a coal sets by itself, it goes out. So when you put that coal together, all the coals, they heat up. Of course, you got to work on yourself individually, but it's always good to have iron sharpen iron.
All right. So we've heard. Sorry, I'm still navigating my new set. All right. So we've heard from both sides. Heard some good arguments on both sides. Now I just want to take a quick poll. Who thinks we should do a study on individual holiness? I'm not going to make you talk. I just need a vote from the group. All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And who wants to do community holiness? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, no, I'm not voting. Did everybody vote? We missed out on, let's do one more vote. Everybody has to vote. You gotta take a stand. I'm forcing you to take a stand. So A, individual holiness. Okay, and community holiness. All right, individual holiness has it. So you and your spouse, you discuss it and you decide to do a study on individual holiness. The first few studies, they go well. Okay, great participation. Several people commit to more accountability and make some changes in their personal habits. The Fishers even decide to commit to taking a media Sabbath every week. But the lessons didn't seem to get through to a few of the group members. You chat with the husband of one of the families, that didn't seem impressed. I'm just not sure I understand why personal holiness is that big of a deal, he says. Jesus died for our sins. We do our best, but I'm a busy guy. I own my own HVAC business. I can't afford to take days off from work or from using my computer. It's great for the Fishers, but he's a computer programmer that works from home. That kind of commitment just wouldn't work for us or for most people. It seems pharisaical to even pursue that kind of study. After you and your spouse talked to a couple other families that participated, they seemed to agree. Either the study didn't get through to them or personal holiness isn't all that important. So what do? Should you A, double down on personal holiness, or B, move on to community holiness, or C, something else? Who wants to take a stand? Travis?
So to clarify, how long into the study are you? Week 2, 3?
Just, yeah, week 2 or 3.
Okay. I'd say double down. Stick with it, because a lot of times, I mean, even this right now, we're feeling real awkward with day 1 of doing this, and come like week 6, we'll be a lot more smooth and used to it and everything.
You don't know that we're all feeling awkward. Just be you.
It is all me. I'll take it all. You're all super smooth. I'm just not. But yeah, so I think just doubling down for that, and also addressing some of the concerns people have with the HVAC and everything else. I mean, I understand you have to be busy, but reinforce the reasoning behind it. I'm sure the study, if it is as good as it claims, has some thoughts behind that. And this isn't the first time it's come up against it. So I think doubling down is the best option.
Okay. Who agrees?
I wouldn't necessarily double down, but just continue with the program, because we're all individuals, and there are all of us have areas where we might not be able to participate in a study completely, but at least we'll learn something about how we can grow individually. One of my problems with trying to grow community-wise is you can get off track a few degrees and pretty soon you're off in the weeds somewhere.
Who disagrees?
So you're in a group study with pretty much who is your church, who is your community, and now you have conflict on what we're studying, why, so self-focused.
Sorry, where are you taking a stand? A, B, or C?
Oh, disagree with yeah. So I would offer that we're halfway through the study of self-holiness. We should offer the other perspective and look into growing the community, because we have half that are in agreement that this is good and half that are in agreement that it is bad. So we should flesh out then this alternate side to see where people stand. And now they've heard both. At that point, they could go, they could then make the decision, we should continue down this one or the other, continue it through. Rather than, no, this is my class, this is the subject we're studying, like it or not, or leave. I don't think that's a good environment for study, especially when you're studying this topic as a group, so you guys should be growing in what direction you should be taking it. And sometimes it takes deviating off the path in order to reel in those people who are in conflict with the other half of the room.
Does anybody strongly agree or disagree?
Disagree. No. If someone thinks personal holiness isn't that important, they don't understand God, they don't understand themselves, they don't understand what holiness even is. You can't have a holy community. You can have a community of holy people. Communities aren't holy. People are holy. And, you just think Achan, the whole story of Achan, one guy's family brings them all down. You cannot do it in the abstract. It's like saying, well, the government's going to do this for us. Governments don't do things. People do things. You cannot change that. he says things like, in all your conduct, be holy because I am holy. The guy who owns the business that's busy can be just as holy as the preacher who has time to do other things. In fact, he's called to be, but he probably doesn't understand what holiness is. He probably thinks it's something, it's not standing off in a corner somewhere, being isolated. That's not the holiness Jesus had. So they need to really study that really hard, understand what it is actually God's asking them to do. Because it's not to stop running your business, it's to be holy in your business and to learn those things. Because we have misconceptions about who God is, what holiness is, and what it means for me to be holy. I tend to think of holy as sacred, like something sitting in the corner that's isolated from the world. That is not. So, okay, enough.
So we have to cut our Socratic discussion a little short today because we are almost on time. What do you want to take away from this discussion today? What lesson stood out to you that you want to leave here with?
I think a huge part of the takeaway for me is perspective. There can be a truth that's an absolute, but other people's perspective on said topic helps me further develop my theology, my understanding of how other people perceive the topic of discussion.
Don't just keep silent because you may be afraid that you're going to be wrong or cause some type of disagreement or I believe this or the other. Because if we don't have these conversations, then no one learns, no one sees conflict. And if you don't see conflict, then you live in a world that isn't real. And that helps grow everyone that is a part of this.
Here, one more maybe? Yeah, I just, for me personally, seeing and listening to everyone process holiness as individuals and as community, it's great to see how much we've already thought through those ideas and also how much we can change and grow. Who changed their mind at least once during our discussion, kind of thinking about an individual versus community? One person? Okay. We'll try to when we have a longer, more protracted discussion. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit more movement. Don't be afraid to move around on these things. Again, I'm trying to set them up so there's not like this is the right answer and this is the wrong answer. Hopefully, you all don't even know what I think or care. That's one of the good things about a Socratic discussion leader is I'm trying to continue to push and challenge. If we're all thinking too much on one way, I want to push the discussion to think, okay, what about the other side? What about when if we're leaning towards the individual, what about when that comes into conflict with the community, right? And so it's not necessarily that that's the way I'm thinking. I just want us to continue to get deeper into the discussion. Next week, we're going to focus on rule number 1. Just be on time and be prepared. So I was here on time with 4 children, prepared and ready. So I'd invite you to join me to do this well. We're going to be studying Ruth. There's one of my children right now. We're going to be studying Ruth. I'm going to send out some resources. And for Ruth, the first discussion that we're going to have is what matters more, the center or the margin? We're thinking about society, we're thinking about a community, we're thinking about people. Does the center of a society matter more, or does the margin matter more? And Ruth is a really good way to do that, because Ruth is kind of the ultimate marginal character. She's an immigrant widow, poor, missing one. I guess kind of an orphan. She has nothing, right? She has almost nothing coming to Israel with Naomi, and so to look at her as the ultimate person on the side. So yeah, we'll hopefully we'll get a chance to think about, prepare for that discussion this week, and we'll have a good discussion next week. Thank you.